Thank you for joining us for this look at the best original reporting from KPBS News this week. I'm Amita Sharma. Coming up, seeking answers and justice. Military families want to know why their loved ones were killed in a training accident at sea. Snapshots of Black history will go inside one of America's largest collections of photos documenting the Black experience. And meet Boombox Chuck, the story behind the local man celebrating music the way it used to be on the streets of San Diego. Of course, the major story this week is Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And even though we're more than 6,000 miles away, San Diego has its own community with ties to the country. As John Carroll reports, they're heartsick watching what's happening.
A little bit of panic. A lot of panic.
When we last spoke with Nadia and Askold Hewaz on Tuesday, they were still holding on to hope, praying that Vladimir Putin would not launch the war against Ukraine that is now underway. They continue reaching out to family and friends. The stories they're hearing now are gut-wrenching.
They've gotten in their car and they are leaving, and when I ask them where they're going to, they do not know. They are very frightened.
But we need support from Americans, sanctions, weapons, because it's time.
Up until recently, the main concern of Father Yuri Sas was the construction of the congregation's new church in Santee. Now his attention is focused thousands of miles away.
People are dying over there. Every minute, every second, people dying. We need to stop this stupid aggression.
Now, both the Hewazes and Father Sas are left with a sinking, hopeless feeling, not knowing what will happen next.
I can't believe it happened. I didn't believe to yesterday, but it happened. And we need to stay together. We need to support each other.
Totally unnecessary, totally unreasonable, just crazy, just something that I couldn't envision, surrealistic, not reality, of another world.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
KPBS is following the war in Ukraine on all of our platforms. Our local coverage on Evening and Midday Edition is supplemented with the latest from our national partners at NPR and PBS NewsHour. It's all right there at kpbs.org and the KPBS YouTube page. Training for combat is dangerous work, and that was evident in 2020 when 8 Marines and a sailor drowned off California's coast. Hearings are underway to get to the bottom of what happened. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh spoke to the parents who were still looking for answers.
He was very loving boy. Loved his dad, his sisters, me.
It's been over 18 months since Lupita Garcia's son was killed in a training accident. 21-year-old Lance Corporal Marco Barranco drowned along with 8 other troops when his vehicle sank off the coast of Southern California in July 2020.
I do feel guilty a bit because I didn't look more into it. Maybe if I would have known that there was all these flaws, maybe all these accidents, I would have talk to my son about it.
Garcia wanted to meet at a park in Montebello, just east of L.A., where her son's name was added to a local veterans memorial. Garcia is among a group of parents who have sat in the audience during a series of hearings at Camp Pendleton, hearings to determine whether some of the leaders involved that day will be kicked out of the Corps.
I believe in God. I have faith, and sometimes I just say, this is what God wanted. Regardless, my son was gonna go. But I don't accept that I was in training. That's what really, really gets me so angry. Why in training?
July 30, 2020, 8 Marines and 1 sailor drowned while returning to the USS Somerset from San Clemente Island in an amphibious assault vehicle. Their unit was so far behind schedule that their ship had moved away to another exercise. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Michael Regner testified that in the confusion, he didn't understand which AAV was sinking. 45 minutes later, the assault vehicle with Garcia's son went under. with several troops still fighting to get out.
I don't feel like we're getting justice. They gave me thousands and thousands of pages that told me that they killed my child. We are responsible for this. But all I hear in these boards, they're going in circles, pointing fingers at each other.
Alita Bath is the mother of 19-year-old PFC Evan Bath of Wisconsin. She has been at nearly all of the hearings. At least 3 officers in charge that day have been allowed to stay in the Corps. Each officer said they told their commanders about problems. None of them stopped the exercise.
They're supposed to be Marines. But no one's taking responsibility, and no one is being held to be responsible. So me sitting in that chair, if nothing else, they have to look at me.
The Marines produced multiple reports pointing to serious lapses in training and equipment breakdowns. And this isn't the only accident. 60 Marines have died in training in the last 5 years. Congressman Seth Moulton of Massachusetts is on the House Armed Services Committee. Moulton is also a former Marine officer. He rode an AAV in combat. He says he and his platoon didn't feel safe riding inside the vehicle while it crossed a river leading into Baghdad 20 years ago.
This gets back to the culture. If I had that concern as a young second lieutenant 20 years ago, then why has the Marine Corps not satisfactorily addressed that since then?
It took another 18 months after the accident for the Marines to finally pull the aging AAVs from sea duty. Moulton says the harder question is whether the Marines can create a culture where officers feel empowered to halt an exercise when they see a problem. Nancy and Peter Vienna's son, Navy Hospital Corpsman Christopher Bobby Nem, drowned that day. Their son was one of the troops who was allowed in the exercise even though he hadn't passed his required swim test. Survivors told them what they saw.
The boys are in the dark. A couple of them had snuck their cell phones, which they weren't supposed to, but brought their cell phones. They're using their cell phones for light to try to see. And it wouldn't have mattered anyway because they never got egress training.
Technically, they aren't even Gold Star families. Congress reserves that title for families of those killed in combat, not training.
I'd rather have my son die in combat because I would have been prepared for this.
Yeah.
I would accept it so much more because I knew this was his job and he's going to battle. Or that's why people ask me why it's been almost 2 years. Why are you still mourning? I'm like, because I can't accept this. I don't get to have an open casket. I don't get justice.
You never saw him again.
I didn't get to tell him I love you. I didn't get to tell him be careful.
Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
As Black History Month comes to a close, there is a place you can find the story of the Black experience, told through decades of snapshots of those who call our community home. KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim visited the Baynard Photo Collection. It's one of the largest archives of its kind, all unique to San Diego.
If you drive by the intersection of Imperial Avenue and 27th, chances are you'll notice the bright blue and terracotta party store selling piñatas. But what you might not know is the significance of this building to San Diego's Black history. Way before it was a party store, this is where the Baynard Photo Studio operated for over 40 years. Open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., no appointment necessary.
Norman Baynard was a Black photographer who had a studio in the Logan Heights area, and he photographed Black San Diego life for decades.
That's Shelby Gordon, a native San Diegan and marketing manager for the San Diego History Center, which is home to the nearly 30,000 images that Norman Baynard took from the early 1930s up until the mid-1980s. Baynard migrated to San Diego from Michigan in the early 1920s. He played banjo at a nightclub, did some garden work in Mission Hills, but ultimately he found his calling, photography. His son Arnold, who donated the photo collection and is pictured here as a child, recalled in an interview for the History Center's podcast that his dad was actually colorblind.
Oh yeah, they say one of the things that made him the best black and white photographer is his color blindness. He was self-taught for one. He learned it all through experiment and trial and error. And from that, it just took off from there.
Over time, Baynard established himself as the premier photographer of San Diego's Black community.
What he did, whether intentionally or not, was capture the 3D-ness of Black San Diego. The faces, the emotion, the victories, the struggle, the dimension, the broad range of colors and sectors and classes.
From childhood birthday parties like Jeanette Bowser's 6th birthday party in 1950 with all her friends, to Christmas celebrations, to baptisms like this one in 1967, hosted by the 35th Seventh-day Adventist Church. For Gordon, some of the photos are of long-forgotten faces, like her old babysitter's boyfriend, Chicken.
This is a photo of a wedding, and this is Chicken.
No way. So this is a personal archive for you.
In many ways, I have found so many snapshots of myself.
As a Black woman, Gordon sees her San Diego reflected back to her, remembered and preserved.
History is personal. It's about individuals.
Baynard's photos are a testament to the fact that history is told through the lives of powerful people, but made by everyday people. Snapshots of ordinary Black lives, lived and enjoyed despite the struggles.
Their lives are important, their stories are important, their history is important. And what Mr. Baynard did was he documented that on film.
Of the thousands of photographs at the center, 500 have been made available online. And thanks to a community-wide effort in 2011, hundreds of people and places captured in the photographs were identified. People like Essie Smart, who won, quote, Colored Woman of the Year in 1957, an award presented by the local Black paper, The Lighthouse. And places that don't exist anymore, like RBG House of Music, which was located on Market Street right across from what's now Mount Hope Community Garden. These photos help connect the past with the present, something which Gordon says is more vital than ever today, when the teaching of Black history is being challenged in schools across the country.
It establishes a bridge. We are still having some of these struggles. And the hope and the desperation and the intention and the commitment that you may have seen in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
And that brings up another big question that Gordon and the History Center are thinking about. The Baynard collection ends in the 1980s. So who's building the archive of Black life in San Diego today? Gordon says she's not worried.
I think that is the key for archiving Black history, is one, reaching into the communities for them to tell, again, their personal story. What made the difference for them? Who made the difference for them? What was the date? What was the event? What was the experience that was crucial in the life of a Black San Diegan?
They are already collaborating with the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture to document and preserve the Black Lives Matter movement. And more importantly, she's counting on Black San Diegans to contribute their photos and complete the archive.
Tell us your story. Submit your leader. Tell us what our timeline is missing.
Because one day, today will be history, and the future will want to know the places and people that made San Diego what it is today. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
The rising cost of rent, especially among San Diego's immigrant communities, is one of our most read stories this week. Jacob Ayer tells us how the neighborhood of City Heights is particularly rent-burdened. Legal recourse for victims of traffic violence is lacking. Andrew Bowen talked with families who say they feel let down by the system. And Matt Hoffman's story on the easing of COVID-19 restrictions and what it means for those who are immunocompromised is one of our most read stories this week at kpbs.org. A big change from the CDC Friday, easing its guidance on mask wearing. The agency now says people are no longer advised to wear masks in indoor public settings as long as they're healthy. Locally this week, San Diego County reached 5,000 deaths linked to the virus since the start of the pandemic. Case numbers continue to trend downward, with 870 new cases reported Thursday. By comparison, we were seeing daily case numbers well over 10,000 during January's peak. If we are indeed returning to something that resembles a pre-pandemic normal, part of that can be found this weekend in City Heights. Jacob Baer tells us about the return of an annual 5K put on by a club that's a space for positive peer pressure and a better future.
The City Heights Runners Club brings together students from middle and high schools around the area. Club co-captain Vanessa Alvarez describes it as a family, where they can share their cultures, languages, and foods.
Like most of the people in the team speak different languages. We can usually communicate because we speak more than one language, and it's not really like a barrier. And usually we host banquets at the end of every season, so we get to try each other's foods and share our culture.
It also provides opportunities for students like the club's captain, Joseph Bluesun, who's a senior at Crawford High School.
I wouldn't have experienced UC Santa Cruz if it wasn't for the running program. We went to running camp and we took a tour of UC Santa Cruz, and immediately I fell in love with Santa Cruz and the university. So that's what really made me decide. So in terms, you can say that the running did affect me, like going to college and going to Santa Cruz, and yeah.
Coach Tlaloc Venancio Mancia says it takes money to create those opportunities for low-income students.
The running shoes are very expensive. So a lot of the kids in the neighborhood cannot afford it. I myself, when I was running in high school, I couldn't afford it. I would go to the parks, like this park, and I would go collect cans to buy my running shoes, So all of that effort, at the end, I ended up getting a scholarship to run out of college.
The club raises money through its annual 5K and Kids Fun Run. They've been doing it for 9 years, with a pause in 2021 because of COVID. The event returns this Saturday at North Choyas Community Park. City Heights Runners coach and co-founder Chris Brewster is happy to have it back.
It's more than just a fundraiser for us. It's started to feel like a City Heights community event.
Online registration is open for the 5K run until Friday at midnight. There will also be a day of race registration at the event from 7 to 8:15 a.m. Saturday. Jacob Baer, KPBS News.
Not far from downtown San Diego, in the heart of Barrio Logan, there are students learning to cook in an unconventional culinary classroom. It's part of the new California Culinary Arts Institute for Adults. But KPBS education reporter MG Perez shows us how children are now the special ingredient in this community of learning.
11-year-old Carlos Sandoval is a chef in the making.
We can do the entree right now.
His mentor is executive chef instructor Sohrab Zardkuhi, who is also the director and founder of the new California Culinary Arts Institute. In the common chaos of a commercial kitchen, Carlos has learned his lessons well.
When you're plating something, you have to be organized. You don't just put the food on the plate. You have to be very presentive.
This 6th grade student spends at least 10 hours a weekend plating and learning the art of cooking in a 6-week program now catering to kids ages 10 to 16. During the week, the school has adults working on cooking and baking certifications, which happens to include Carlos's mother, Angelica. But it's his father who inspired him most.
He always wanted to be a chef one day, and then he didn't have that opportunity to be a chef. So I want to accomplish his dreams as mine.
You're going to lean the meat against the potato.
Chef Zardkuhi is an immigrant from Iran by way of Spain. He's been cooking since he was 6 years old. His is not only a culinary story, it's a love story too.
Every time that my mother cooked, I look first for the leftovers. And I wanted to eat the leftovers because I appreciated for what she had done. I didn't want it to be left, I don't know, without attention. And I'm going to turn it on for you and go.
Danica Maitorina is almost 10 years old.
You had to put a little bit fire on it and it turns brown.
She's making creme brulee on her first day. She tells us her home cooking includes pancakes, cookies, and tortillas, among many other talents. Danica dances too while living with a diagnosis on the autism spectrum, which only makes her dreams to become a chef that much more exceptional.
I want to have a restaurant. I want to make my own foods and desserts.
What kind of food?
Like soup, tacos, pizza, cheeseburgers.
The chef and his team of instructors are here to educate and cultivate young cooks.
They want to be proud, and they want their parents to be proud of it. It is good for them to teach them how to eat healthier rather than fast foods.
The new Culinary Institute is in the heart of Barrio Logan, a neighbor to culture and the crisis of homelessness. But in these tents could be a future success story created in a kitchen. The chef plans for scholarships to include homeless students, and he wants to hire those in need to staff an outdoor patio restaurant, with all proceeds going to homeless programs and other charities.
When ability comes in, responsibility should kick in as well. So if God made me available to have this school, and I don't want to be the only one who gets the benefit.
It'd be nice to learn how to cook other things aside from just eggs.
You know how to cook eggs?
Yep. Oh, very well.
14-year-old Joshua Mesa is more comfortable chopping boards than food. He's successful at mixed martial arts and now steps out of his comfort zone to try his skills in a kitchen.
I think cooking is a way we can express ourselves and a way to get to know a lot of people. And without even having to use or learn another language, cooking is just kind of a universal thing we all know and all do.
I have no words, it's just delicious.
Cooking with love is also universal. Carlos puts it this way.
By the way we make it is kind of like love. Like you give somebody a hug, they love it. You give somebody food, they love it.
Like student, like chef.
Once you touch a food, and you touch this food with passion to care for someone, to give with someone, because you love that someone, it tastes different.
That's a delicious recipe for love and learning. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Before we go, we have a blast from the past with a modern twist. Music has come a long way since the 80s, but one San Diegan says old school tech is the new school style. Maya Trabulsi introduces us to Boombox Chuck and his love for retro culture.
It's an iconic machine. The boombox is like a bodily extension to Miguel Nunez.
I'm recognized for something I never even thought would happen in my life, which is carrying a boombox and rocking a style like that.
He goes by the name Boombox Chuck and is well known for his passion for vintage music systems.
I'm new school to the old school, but I saw the boombox and I just knew immediately I could be that guy walking around the city with a boombox blasting music.
Born in the 80s, an era when boomboxes were prolific in urban American pop culture, his love for the style and music of the time started at an early age.
The elements are like graffiti, DJing, breakdancing, b-boying, and beat-girling, and MCing, which is like rapping in a sense. Everyone could have a style. Everyone could be themselves, and I think that's what a lot of the culture promoted in the early days.
Fast forward to today, when Nunez is not working at Pokey's vegetarian Mexican restaurant. He's often seen walking the city streets, audibly spreading his love of retro beats to all who cross his path.
I have conversations with all kinds of people, all kinds of walks of life, all ages, all ethnicities, and I just see something so sacred in that. So maybe by default, I'm reminding people to be themselves, you know, and to express themselves, most importantly, responsibly, of course, you know.
His collection of boomboxes is made up of specially selected personal favorites.
This is my baby. It's the one I started with. Speakers on top. Check that out. It's about 6-speaker system, double deck.
The only thing hindering his acquisitions is lack of space to store them.
Sanyo again, very good brand. One of my favorite right now. Prized possession, never for sale. Let's see what we got. I will hunt them down every weekend, every chance I get, every flea market. And you see a boombox out of nowhere, you're like, whoa.
And the bigger the box, the bigger the size and number of batteries it requires.
Batteries are a very consistent part of rocking a boombox, playing a boombox.
Nunez holds hope that a battery company might take note of his mass consumption and possibly help him along the way.
It's just like a trip how many batteries I may have gone through. I can't even imagine. And that's why now I want to kind of better document it, because eventually I want to send the battery company a portfolio like, hey, what's up? I could be a potential marketing gadget.
And audio cassette tapes are becoming more like treasured vinyl. Nunez says tape sales, especially for local bands, have made a resurgence.
Beatbox.
He says most record stores in San Diego sell cassette tapes.
Something about the old-fashioned physical copy, reading the credits or the details or the special shout-outs, you know.
But there will always be an element of those plastic cassette tapes that no one will ever miss.
Out of nowhere, sometimes my tape would just get like eaten up. I'm like, oh no, I had the best mix ever. I'll never get that again.
In a time when technology has allowed us to have so much more than we did in the past, to Boombox Chuck, it's the past that feeds the present. For him, the self-expression born of retro culture will always play on a loop. Maya Trabulsi, KPBS News.
We hope you enjoy this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Amitha Sharma. Thank you for joining us.